Hey, this is Alex with the Unbiased Trailblazer podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Unbiased Blazers. There's a link in our bio for our Discord server where you can join in on the discussions, give us your takes, give us comments, or just join in on a podcast. Now, let's get to the show. Rip City, baby.
3, 2, 1, 0.
Liftoff and the clock has started.
What is up, Rip City? It is a glorious Friday. This is a special edition of the Unbiased Trailblazer podcast. We woke up on a Friday morning, ready for the weekend, and we are shocked and surprised, and I would guess probably thrilled with the news that we heard. The Portland Trailblazers have decided to move on from Neil Olshey. They fired him this morning. I don't know about you, Fawad, but I was sitting at work and I was talking to a friend at work about stocks and how terribly bad my stocks are. And as I'm looking at my stocks, I get this alert pop up on my phone saying Neil Olshey has been fired. What was it for you?
I have Fridays off. I have no classes or anything, so I sleep in all the time. I wake up with and I have tweet notifications on for Shams, for Woj, for Chris Haynes. So I just wake up and I see 10 notifications that Neil Olshey has been fired. And I'm like, holy! I was not expecting it at all. I did think initially that it would come at some point, but then you remember how Quick said that now he thinks that Olshey's gonna end up staying. So at that point, I thought Olshey was just staying until the end of the season. So I was not expecting this news to come at all. Yeah, I was just shocked, really.
Yeah, I mean, I was mid conversation with my friend and I was like, okay, I gotta stop. I gotta go look at all this. So but yeah, I mean, normally the news breaks that lately have been happening have been towards the end of Fridays, not 9 o'clock in the morning Pacific time. So it was crazy. And then I joined the Twitter Spaces that the Blazers fans had going on, and it was just everybody was so excited and so hopeful, and it really does kind of even though we had a terrible game last night, it kind of makes you forget about everything. It's almost kind of like a clean slate, and we're just hoping for some more change. So, with that being said, like I mentioned, Neil Olshey is no longer the GM for the Blazers. You said you had an article about who the new interim GM is. Do you have any information on him at all?
Yeah, so the interim GM is Joe Cronin, and there's not even a lot of information out there. When I Googled his name, a different Joe Cronin came up, a baseball player. So he's not even the most famous Joe Cronin. But Joe Freeman is a beat reporter for the Blazers, and he had posted an article that he wrote 10 years ago about Joe Cronin, and it doesn't tell us a whole lot, but it just says that he's really good with the NBA salary cap and the CBA. And I mean, I guess that's good, but I would expect most GMs to be pretty good with that. But I like the little details of the cap and CBA myself, so I was kind of happy about that. I don't know, I just felt like I have a little bit of a connection. Um, so just based on that, there's nothing else. There's just different examples of I don't know um how he learned the CBA and how he got to the Blazers in the first place. But as someone who wasn't, or at least I don't think he was that high up in the front office, I feel like there's not much to judge him on. And that's going to be the case with basically anyone who hasn't been a GM themselves. You don't really know how much of the team they were part of, their moves, how much were they responsible for it, how much was um someone else responsible for it. So I don't really have a strong reaction to the interim GM. Um, yeah, because there's really nothing to base him off of. He seems like a nice guy based off that article, like a hardworking, um, just a nice person, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, truly, I've never heard of him, and it sounds like
Me
he's been with
neither.
us for at least a little while. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with you mentioning the cap space, that's going to be an interesting thing because, as we all are all too aware, our cap situation is a little iffy. So him
Yes.
having some good knowledge on that might be helpful. Do you think we find out sooner rather than later on if we're hiring a new GM or if we're going to go through this season with him? What do you think?
Um. Well, it depends on what you think is sooner and what's later. Like, I do think we'll have someone by the trade deadline, which is I think February 10th, if I remember correctly. So that's about like a little bit over 2 months away. So I feel like by then we should have someone because I doubt like this is an important season for the Blazers, um,
Exactly.
roster wise, Dame wise, everything. So I don't think they would leave that up to an interim GM. They would want to. They would want someone making the decisions who's going to be here long term. So I think latest maybe like mid January. But again, I'm just speculating. I have no information or concrete like reason to believe that.
So I kind of want to talk about a little couple things here, but I want to add, I think I would assume we would see a new GM soon because with the status of our roster and how we've been performing, I think they realize change is needed. This roster isn't able to do what's needed. And if they wait till closer to the trade deadline, that gives that GM less time to work out
Yeah.
deals. So if I'm just trying to think with my own brain, in my opinion, I would want to try to get a new GM in as soon as possible. But who knows? Maybe they go with the interim GM for now, and try to work out trades together as a group. I mean,
I mean,
as far as that goes.
it could just be that they like this interim GM and they are
Exactly.
pretty much planning on giving him the job, and maybe they'll just do like a little bit of due diligence and look at other
Yeah.
people. But it might just be that they already have who they want.
Yeah,
And
and
this
go for it.
investigation's been going on for a while, so they've known that they'll likely need someone
Yeah,
else. So I
exactly.
would not be surprised if they've already done like a decent search already.
Yeah, and before we go into talking about the other GMs, let's just quickly. I'm sure most people listening already are familiar with Neil Olshey. The biggest problem with him, and we've both agreed that we weren't completely against him. He's just not a very big risk taker. He's more of just a play it safe, get a roster that can compete, and then hope for the best. I'm 100% ready for someone to come in and just take risks, and it's now or never. So I don't know how you feel about that, but that was one of the biggest issues with Olshey was he was more of just a play it safe kind of guy. And how do you
Yeah.
feel about?
Yeah, I'm definitely one of the more relatively pro Neil Olshey guys in like probably in all of the Blazers fandom. I think he's made like a lot of really, really good moves. None of them for a star, obviously, but that's not easy to do. He's made a couple mistakes and a couple of really big mistakes, but in terms of like the number of moves, I think his good strongly outweighs the bad. But his flaw comes from what you said. He's not a big risk taker, and specifically with CJ, he's been extremely reluctant to trade him. And even I have been like, it's a really risky move to trade him. But at this point, I'm not even gonna get into it too much. But at this point, I'm ready to send CJ off, even if we get like pennies on the dollar. um, but yeah, I won't get into that. That's a conversation for another day. But yeah, his biggest flaws are definitely that he's risk averse and I guess arrogant is the right word, or he's like
Yeah, definitely.
he's so sure of his moves that he wants to see it go through instead of trying something different.
And
Yeah,
it feels like the last couple years he's just like moved players, minor players for other minor players, hoping that's the difference that we need. Nance was probably, besides the Nurkic trade, which that's to me the Nurkic trade is the biggest success that he's had, and it's not even been that big of a success. So all the time that he's been with Portland, one trade. I mean, the Norman Powell trade is a good trade. it was kind of a lateral trade because we were getting rid of Gary Trent for him, so it wasn't like
Yeah,
wasn't much
it was about
gain.
equal.
Yeah, but as far as the Nurkic trades, that's about the only trade where everyone was like, "Oh, okay, that's a good trade that works out for us." Nance was another one.
I liked the he's gone now, but Rodney Hood, we traded
True,
like
true.
what was it, like Wade Baldwin and what was his name, Nick Stauskas. They weren't even in our rotation, and Rodney basically became a starter for us for a couple of games as well before he got injured. So until he got injured, I thought that was like a really great trade. Um,
Yeah, and
and
that
then
kind of
Robert,
feels like a no-brainer trade, honestly. Like if
yeah,
anyone got that offer, they're like, "Yeah, I'll take that right away."
yeah, but he was able to get out there and
That's
get
true.
that
That is
offer.
true.
And then the Covington is similar to the Norman Powell trade, where the value is about equal. He didn't
Yeah.
like come out with a home run, but I think the value that he brings to us is greater than two rookies and would be. So I think that was a good trade too. But again, like the value is most GMs could probably make that trade, to be honest.
Yeah, and another thing I wanted to add, it's extremely weird the timing of all of this. He was actually at
Very
the
weird.
game last night. He was sitting there watching the game. I know Jason Quick tried to ask Jody Allen about the process that's been going on, and she said no comment. And then wake up this morning and he's a goner. So I don't know if last night's game was the tipping point. I don't know if they were just finally at this point. Let's let's move on. Um, it looks like actually before we go any farther, it looks like we might have just got a message from somebody talking about Neil Olshey. Let me see what it says real quick.
Also, real quick, Jason Quick, like continuing on that, he said that
Yeah, go for it.
Jason Quick talked to what was her name? Jody Allen and someone else, Bert something. I can't find it right now. And there was no indication to Neil that he was gonna get fired, and then he was informed this morning. So it's it seemed like he was okay last night, at least from his point of view. But yeah, I don't think they made this decision overnight. It was probably like just they were. I think they had the decision already,
Yeah.
even before that.
So in Discord, Otis just sent us a message on this whole situation, and I think for a lot of us, this is the one aspect of Neil Olshey that we all can kind of agree on is he was actually a pretty good rookie drafter. He made some pretty good choices in the draft. So Otis said if you look at the actual draft record versus the average, there's Will Barton, Pat Connaughton, Alan Crabb, Zach Collins, Nasir Little, Anthony, CJ, Gary Trent, and then of course Lillard. He
Yeah,
said these guys go for it.
other than Dame and CJ, those were all late first round or second round,
Yes,
and they're all
exactly.
rotation players around the league, and that's much higher than the average player you get at like the position they were drafted in.
And that is exactly what Otis is saying. Those are all late first rounders or second rounders, and they're still in the league, and they all have second contracts. So he said his biggest fear is losing that draft record because of how well he did draft. It's just the other issues that he had. And so Otis, I just want to shout you out. That's perfect, perfect, perfect. We appreciate it. That is something to be concerned about. Right now, we don't really have many picks, so there's not much we can do in the draft, anyways. But it will be an issue pretty soon. So, do you have a GM in mind that you want?
I do not, but really one last thing about the draft. He did miss really badly on Caleb Swanigan with the
Yes.
28th,
Yes.
I think 27th pick in the 2017 draft. And then he traded 2 picks to move up for Zach Collins, and I like Zach Collins a lot. Most people did. So because he got injured, it looks kind of bad,
Yeah.
especially since there were a lot of other players around him. But like that was just an okay, I guess. But everyone else has been a positive draft pick. Um, yeah. So about I don't know who I would want. I don't know too much about other front office people around the league. Even like the big GMs or the who I would have some opinion of. They're either not going to leave their teams or there's a reason they left their teams, like they were fired. So I don't know. I don't know who I would want. I know a couple of people I wouldn't want, but I don't know.
Who's the couple you wouldn't want?
So Chris Haynes tweeted earlier that two candidates that are expected to receive strong consideration are the Bulls GM and the Knicks GM. The Bulls GM is great. I don't think he's even gonna like consider leaving, but the Knicks GM Scott Perry, I think he had a big part in why New York was so bad for all these years. And then once they hired a new president, which was I think like Leon Rose, that's when the Knicks started to turn around, and Scott Perry had nothing to do with that. So I don't think I would want him. And then a lot of fans want Danny Ainge. He's pulled off a couple big trades, but I feel like he's pretty overrated overall. Um, he's made a couple bad moves, and the sentiment before he left was that a lot of players are unhappy with him because of the Isaiah Thomas thing, how he has like no relationship or
Sure.
care
Sure.
about his players. One thing that Neil Olshey did right for the most part, he did right by his players a lot, and I think most players were like happy, or they were treated how they should, with respect basically. And Danny Ainge trades everyone with like no regard. That could be helpful for building a team, but it also could hurt the culture. It could hurt um, how much players buy into the team. But I'm not huge on him, but I would be okay if we got Danny Ainge. But I would prefer to go somewhere else.
Yeah, Danny Ainge is a pretty popular choice. He grew up around Portland. He played for Portland. A lot of people like, when he was in Boston making the trades that he made to get the players he wanted. So I can see why people want him here. Um,
I can
like I
see it
said,
too.
yeah, like I said, to me, it's just I want someone who's still is okay with taking risk. And if it's Danny Ainge, if it's anybody, as long as they're okay with taking risk and realizing that this is a like win now for us or else it's over with, that's what we need.
I
So
think Danny Ainge would definitely be willing to take risks. I'm just scared that he might be too willing.
too many risks, yeah.
Yeah, I
And then
think
it's like
I think at one
you're
point with Boston, he was rumored to trade, or he wanted to trade like 4 picks for Justice Winslow or something, and the other team turned it down. I think it's Miami. So if that
they
went through,
regret that.
his track record would look a lot worse.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely you're taking risks by trading players, but I
Yeah,
think as far as our team is considered, and we know what we have, and we know what the outcome is going to be, there's not much risk at this point. We're gonna have to trade CJ. We have to make a decision on Simons and Nurk. So I have a feeling at least one of those has got to go if they're gonna make trades, because I don't think we're gonna be able to re-sign both of them. Essentially, if we don't trade CJ, that's to me that's telling me Simons is gone. That they're not even gonna try. I just don't see how we can keep 4 guards that are 6'3". It's just
yeah.
it
I think
doesn't
at
work.
least one of them has to go at the trade deadline, and hopefully it's CJ because I think Ant can.
Yes,
Um, we all believe in his potential, and just as a worst case scenario, if Dame does decide to leave this offseason, then Ant is a decent piece to like have a young core with, to start your young core with.
for sure. I mean, we have Nasir Little who's looking to, he's making the right steps. We have Simons who's making the right steps. Both are still very young. Um, if Dame, I to me, in my opinion, Dame has to be probably one of the most happy people out of everybody. He's not going to come out and say, Neil O'Shea needs to be fired and all that. He's one of those guys that just comes to work and plays and does what he needs to do. But I know I have to believe he is more than satisfied with what happened today. He wanted change, change didn't happen. I can almost guarantee it that he's happy. And you mentioned that he was supposed to be on Reddit today, right?
Yeah, Dame.
And
He's
he was
supposed
going
to
to
do
do
an AMA on RNBA.
yeah, and that's some interesting timing. So if he does end up doing that today, I'm curious to hear what kind of questions he gets and what he says to those questions.
I feel like he wouldn't even respond to the Neil O'Shea questions, but I really truly hope that he does.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah,
if it's
right.
like, even if he kind of dodges it a little bit, I just want something.
So one other questions, because I mean, do you agree? Do you think Dame's more than happy that Olshea's gone?
Yeah, I think he he was probably ready to move on, probably even before last year.
Now, what about Nurk? How do you think he's feeling?
Um, I don't know if there's actually anything to back this up, but I feel like Nurk did not like Olshey at all.
I feel exactly the same way.
And I don't really know why I think that. I just feel like that's the vibe I've gotten.
I try to think like why he wouldn't, and the only thing I can think of is that he sees the way he kept Stotts for so long and how Stotts wasn't really using him. Because I think we all knew that Nurkic was annoyed with Stotts.
By the end, yeah.
Yeah, by the end he was over. And I'm gonna be honest with you, we all love Nurk, and he's been an important piece to our team this season, and honestly last season. He's since that injury, he's not been the same, which is understandable, but it's just mentally he's not. There's games when he has these he's so inconsistent. He has these great games and then he follows them up with just last night's game against San Antonio was one of the worst games I've ever watched, honestly.
Yeah, that was not a pretty sight to see.
I mean,
and yeah, for sure. Like everyone knows, even Nurk will admit it himself that he has issues controlling his emotions, and he gets moody. Oh, sorry, and he gets moody at times.
yeah. So I'm curious to see the outcome of what's going to happen with this. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I can go on for a while.
Go
A
for
new
it.
GM, like a new GM, is just so important. If we pick someone who's not good, and I think there's a very good chance that we could end up hiring someone who's not better than Neil, even though they'll take risks and it might work out in the short term. I think it might. There's a good chance that we could hire someone because it's always going to be a risk. And then if we hire someone that's worse than Olshey, we could be stuck in a rebuild for a long, long time. So whoever we hire, it needs to be um, a really good decision. And Bobby Marks just tweeted about what sorry, one second. I think he's trying to say that the new GM should look at trading Dame. So I'm never mind. I'm not even gonna read that. If I read that correctly. But yes, there were some other candidates that were tweeted out by some reporters. I was just pulling that up. So
One of them I saw was Tayshaun Prince.
yeah, Tayshaun Prince was one of them. I think Sean Hyken and someone else tweeted that. Um, he said he's been hearing Tayshaun's name consistently since this all started a month ago, and Tayshaun, I didn't even know he was in the Memphis front office.
Me either.
Apparently, he's been there for a while, and at least their fans think he's pretty good. And
Which
then
I'm
the
not
other name,
surprised because he's Billups' teammate and they're good
oh yeah,
friends.
and then yeah, they were on the Pistons together. I think they were both on the championship team. Yeah, they were. So yeah, I think that would be interesting. I would be on board for that. It is a risk though because I don't think he's been a GM ahead like the GM himself. And then another name that was floated out was again by Sean Hyken, Spurs executive Brent Barry, and I feel like I've heard positive things about him as well. So either of those, I think they could be pretty. I think that those could work out.
I mean, at this point, we're in a free for all right now, so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens.
If we hire Tayshaun, we might as well bring Rashid back in some capacity as well.
Right? Bring the whole team.
and
Get
then
Rip Hamilton too.
And then
Ben
hopefully
Wallace.
Ben Wallace can teach us defense. Like
Oh God,
if
please.
he can't, I don't know who can.
So, let me ask you one more question.
So
CJ obviously is probably the most likely person to be traded.
for sure.
Who do you think? First off, I want to say this. I made a joke when the news broke. I tweeted out. I bet I can guarantee you that Portland Trailblazer phone is ringing off the hook from Philadelphia trying to get Damian Lillard traded to them now.
Yeah.
So, who do you think is a realistic target for CJ?
That's like a whole podcast itself. Like I said earlier, at this point, I'm so frustrated with CJ that I'd be willing to just send him out, and even if we just get a role player in return, I think I would be happy with that at this point. But in terms of like equal value, I've been saying Jeremy Grant for the longest time, and
I'd love
he
it.
has kind of been worse than what I expected this season. But I still think as like the third guy on offense after Dame and Norm, um, I think he could be really well. He has enough shot creating ability. He can definitely spot up in the corners like he did with Denver, and he's a great defender too. So I think that could be a really really good fit um, at the 3 for us, or even he can play the 4 as well. And he's big, so he can guard some of the big wings on other teams, like a LeBron. Um, and then obviously there's the Ben Simmons of it all.
Yeah, that was a hot topic today.
I'd say I've slightly warmed up to that over the past couple of weeks, but basically I've just gone from zero chance to I don't think it would work, but it might be worth a shot. So I think that's where I'm at right now. What do you think?
Jeremy Grant, probably 1A, 1B. The other person I would love to have, and whether it could ever even happen, Siakam, which we've talked about.
Oh yeah,
They have Scotty Barnes. I'm sure they want him to be more of a focal point. Siakam hasn't really played very much. He's been injured.
Yeah.
I know they have Gary Trent. I know they have Fred VanVleet. But they're kind of getting loaded up with talent to the point where they're not able to play everybody the right amount of time. And Scotty Barnes is pretty special. He's a rookie. He's probably going to end up being rookie of the year if I had to guess. Siakam just seems like he could be so helpful for us.
Yeah, I think he fits beautifully with our team.
So for me, it's him or Grant. Honestly, I know we started off saying, yeah, we want Ben Simmons, and then we kind of like tapered off of it and we're like, never mind, we don't. If it was just a straight swap for CJ for Ben Simmons, I have no problem with it. Once you start getting into more, giving up more, that's when.
Yeah, I'm still completely against giving up any picks.
Yeah, that's when we have to really like question, like, is there not a better deal than this right here? But Siakam, I think, would be my number one, followed very closely by Jeremy Grant. And honestly, if either one of those two were to happen, I'd be ecstatic with that. So
Also, another factor why I think Jeremy Grant would be a really good target. Um, Siakam and Simmons both make 33 million compared to CJ's 31. So we would be taking on money, and with the repeater tax, that's going to
true.
add up like significantly.
That's true.
So I don't know if ownership would be willing to do that, but we also have Robert Covington, who I'm sure we will be looking to trade. So if we offset, either send him to that team or maybe somewhere else and get enough less in return, that could work. But again, it would be
I'd
really
assume that's what would happen. Any trade with CJ where we're getting a big name player, Covington's probably in that deal as well.
Yeah, but if we do send him to a different team, like not Toronto, if we do Siakam, not Philadelphia, if we do Simmons, it's gonna be really tough because we're taking on 2 million from CJ, and then we're already 3 mil over the tax. So
Yeah,
we're gonna have to cut 5 million, and Covington makes like 12. So that's really not really possible unless it's I think there's 2 or 3 teams that have a trade exception that's that big.
mm-hmm.
So I'm just rambling on into the details of the cap now, but
See, I love that
essentially,
you're into this cap so much.
yeah, I don't know. I know a lot about it. I enjoy looking at it. So, yeah, it's not really possible except for I don't remember off the top of my head. I know Boston for sure has a trade exception that's that could fit him. I feel like Orlando might be one, and there was a third one. I don't remember who that was. But yeah, if we send him to a different team, that would be really tough. If we send him to to the Sixers for maybe Simmons and Thibault, or maybe like Korkmaz or something, I think that could probably work. I don't know the math right now, but yeah, the point is, if we trade CJ for one of them, we would definitely have to trade trade Covington as well, and likely get less value than he probably should earn otherwise.
But if that means getting our defense better,
Yeah,
getting
then
us
it's
a
definitely
bigger
worth
name
it.
player, then I think it's worth it. Something's got to change, though. I think we're all in agreement that
Yeah, for sure.
something's got to change. Anything else before we wrap it up? I got to head back to work pretty soon, so.
All right, just one last closing thought. You just said change, and we're obviously about to have a big change, but I don't know how much of that is going to affect the team. Hopefully, it's a positive effect, but if we keep playing with as little effort as we are right now, it doesn't matter what the roster is. We're not going to be winning anything like this. So hopefully, the new GM is able to motivate the guys a little bit more somehow. But right now, it seems like more than just a roster issue. I don't know if it's a coaching issue or if it's just on the players, but they don't seem
Well,
to be putting in a lot of effort.
you bring up a good point. I wanted to talk about it, so thanks for reminding me. One thing I've been disappointed about this season, I know it's early and I know it's first year coach,
Accountability.
but yes, he comes out, Chauncey sells us on this. I'm going to hold people accountable. I'm going to put an address on it. And literally, the interviews I've heard, he's putting blame on other coaches. The other night, I think he blamed Scotty Brooks, I think is who it was, on defense, saying, I'm not a defensive coach. So it's like, you need
Oh,
to.
really? I didn't hear that. I didn't listen
Yeah,
to that one.
I can't remember when it was, but someone asked him about defense, and I think it was Scott Brooks. He said, I'm not the defensive coach, he is. And it's like,
I
first
think
off,
Roy
that's not.
Rogers is our defensive coach, though.
Well, I thought he said Scott Brooks, which is why I thought it was weird, because I'm like, I would not consider Scott Brooks a defensive. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, someone tell me. I swear that's what I heard, or maybe I read it. I can't remember. It's very weird. But even then, he's not holding these players accountable. He said, we heard him say he was going to make, if change doesn't happen, we're going to have to make a change with our lineup.
Yeah,
The only
nothing
change
happened.
he's made is because of injuries. So it's just, I like Chauncey. I think he could be a good coach. And like I said, he said the right things. Now he has to act on what
Yeah,
he
and
said.
speaking of his post-game interviews, I think the last game, actually, it probably wasn't yesterday. It might have been the one before. Um, I didn't see it myself, but I saw someone say that he said he's been disappointed with our effort lately, even in our wins. And I
Yep, that
found that
was
a little
last
bit
game.
frustrating because I have seen some of his post-game interviews after the wins, like in wins that I thought our effort was low and we still managed to beat a team because they were just that bad. And
Hmm.
he never said anything about not being happy with our effort in those wins. He would like compliment the team, and that was a little bit frustrating to me because some games we didn't even deserve that win, and we did pull it out, and he was seemingly okay with that, and I found that annoying.
Yeah, I think on our next podcast, I think we should talk a little bit about Billups, because
Yeah.
that's beginning to get a little touchy subject with everybody now. So we've moved on from fire Terry Stotts. We've moved on from fire Neil Olshey. Now the question is, what's the next thing? Is it going to be fire Billups? Is it going to be trade CJ? Is it going to be? I mean, obviously everyone says that already, but what's the next big thing?
I feel like Jody's gonna be the next target for the fan base.
Yeah, maybe.
Unfortunately, you can't fire the owner.
Yeah, and right now the way the team's looking, it's not very appetizing for someone to want to buy. So,
That's true too.
anything else before we wrap up?
No, I think I got it out all of my thoughts.
We will most definitely on Monday continue this conversation, because I'm sure we'll
Definitely.
have more that comes out and more to want to say. But we wanted to get this podcast out real quick. Big news. Step in the right direction, I think. Just all depends on where we go from here. But it's at least the correct first step. So I hope you guys have a good night. See you later. Neil Olshey wouldn't want to be you. And as always, Rip City, baby.